Energy media readers, you have probably heard Alberta Premier Jason Kenney musing these days about the Saudi-Russia oil price war and how it is predatory dumping into global oil markets. To discuss that, we've invited Professor John Ries who's a specialist in international trade from UBC. So welcome to the interview, John.
Thank you. Happy to be here.
Now, I hear predatory dumping being used a lot. I don't know what it is. I don't imagine most of my readers don't. Could you give us a little bit of an introduction?
Sure, except I don't know that term either. The term that I'm most familiar with is dumping, and that is written into the trade law in Canada and worldwide through the WTO, and that is exporting goods at a price below the so-called normal price. The normal price could either be the price you're selling in the home market or a measure of average cost. And so if you have selling below normal price and injury to the foreign markets, then that constitutes dumping and is grounds for a WTO case or the Chapter 19 case within the context of the USMCA, although it may have a different chapter number now with the new agreement. So that's dumping. There's also predatory pricing, which is a competition policy concept, and it's similar. It's pricing below cost with the intent to lessen competition.
Okay, it seems like, so we've got two concepts here that the Premier seems to have conflated into one. And in your opinion, is what Saudi Arabia and Russia doing, does that constitute dumping?
Yeah, I think it would be very difficult to establish a dumping case here. I mean, as people well aware, what goes on with OPEC and their agreements with Russia is a form of collusion or cartelization. And that's also grounds for competition policy, because collusion is illegal. And what we seem to be observing is a breakdown of the collusion. So it's not clear that the price is below the normal price. It's just come off the collusive price.
Yeah, that's a really interesting point. And your definition of predatory pricing was around the average cost of production. But for the Saudis, that's like $5 a barrel. And
right.
They're obviously not going below that. So does that qualify as predatory pricing?
I don't believe it would. I don't think you could establish that, as well as you'd have to establish that it's harming foreign producers, which is another element that you'd have to establish. Plus, it would be a long legal dispute. The WTO isn't even really functioning at the moment because the U.S. has not allowed for some of the judges to be reappointed. So I don't see anything really going on legally in terms of what's going on with these prices.
So if I understand this correctly, Jason Kenney is asking the President of the United States, accusing, well, the two of them have actually accused Saudi Arabia and Russia of this practice of dumping. And then the organization that's designed to resolve that, Donald Trump has not allowed the judges to be reappointed, so basically making it toothless.
Correct. I don't think there's any sort of grounds to pursue this. I mean, you could try to do it. You can't do it through the WTO because it's just not functioning. You could do it through domestic law, but that would be a long, hard slog, and I don't think that you'd be able to establish that something incorrect was being done or something that violated predatory pricing laws or dumping laws.
Now, the second question for you is around this idea of a closed North American market for crude oil. Premier Kenney has floated this a couple of times. No comment yet from President Trump. What is that a functional idea? Like, could it actually work?
Yeah, could you expand on that? I mean, closed meaning that there will be no all trade in oil will be within North America, and none will be into other markets?
Yes, I think that's the idea. Now, nobody's expanded on this, so I'm kind of extrapolating from the comments of theirs that I've read. But my understanding is they want to go back to kind of Eisenhower's idea of putting import quotas on non-North American oil, keep it out of the market, and keep domestic North American markets for domestic North American producers.
So I'm not an expert on oil markets, but I am aware that both Canada and now the U.S. are now net exporters of oil. And so it would seem kind of crazy to shut off our opportunity to ship our oil into foreign countries. It would be tremendous loss of business opportunities. And as a trade economist, I believe that, there should be, trade based on comparative advantage. It, would lower oil prices here because the oil that we're producing in North America would be kind of stuck within North America, which would have benefits for, some people. It would be terrible for the oil industry and wouldn't be efficient because you're not allowing free trade to take place.
And one of the arguments, or one of the reasons why I think this argument is curious, is because at the same time, the Alberta Premier is talking about natural gas exports to Asia in the form of LNG. And it seems very odd that if you're an oil and gas producer, you think you can close the markets for oil, but take advantage of open markets for gas. I would imagine that their competitors would have something to say about that.
Yeah, I agree. And probably there are rules about closing off exports to third countries that, and just like there are restrictions on import quotas in trade law, there's some restrictions on export quotas or boycotts as well. I think Canada's run into this with some of the issues we've had with log rules restricting log exports to foreign markets.
Now, my final question for you is around the idea of a trade war. And I get a lot of arguments from Albertans about why don't we put import quotas on Saudi Arabian oil, because our oil is ethical, their oil is unethical. It's a dictatorship from their point of view. And one of my questions is, well, if you ban Saudi oil, do you not think that the Saudis would then retaliate with a trade war against Canada? I mean, there are things that we sell them that are non-oil and gas related that they would be able to cancel the contracts or block those terms. I mean, is that not a reasonable expectation that if you start closing your markets in some areas, that the countries that are being affected will retaliate?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, this is just sort of a general question that's come up quite a bit in the last few years with Trump tariffs, and you would expect retaliation. Industry is always interested in having protection from import competition. There'd be no end to industries who would say we would like protection, but then other countries will implement protection, and the benefits of a free and open trading environment would be diminished. So trade economists would never promote any sort of import protection just to protect domestic industry. I mean, if there's dumping or some violations of trade law, yes, but not just as a general rule.
Yeah, I mean this, and this would be that was my second last question. This one will be my last question. This reminds me of 1929, 1930, when the Americans enacted the Hawley-Smoot law. Hawley-Smoot?
Harley-Smoot? Smoot-Harley.
Yes.
Smoot-Harley.
Thank you for that correction. It's been a long time since I took my history degree. Anyway, the point is that they threw up protectionist walls around the United States market, and that was partly credited for kicking off the Great Depression.
Right, and that was the fear that we had with the U.S.-China trade war, that there was this tit-for-tat retaliatory tariffs was very harmful for industries that were dependent on supply chains and stuff from China and global supply chains. And, trade economists will tell you, trading based on comparative advantage is efficient. It increases the global pie, economic pie. Everyone benefits. If that unravels, then there's going to be general harm to the world economies.
Professor Ries, thank you very much for this. This has been fascinating, and no doubt this issue is going to be on our plate for a while, so I look forward to chatting with you about it again in the future.
Sounds good. My pleasure. Thank you, Markham.